It's the dot of excellence.
Gregory the Great, yeah, that's like a huge undertaking. You talk about like a leap of faith. Yeah, I'm glad to hear everybody all. Good, good. Agreed? All right, good luck.
Okay, are you ready? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'll ask people to start taking their seats, please. We're going to get going here in just a moment. is Patrick Crane, and I'm the president of Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual Dr. Keith Cassidy Lecture. To begin this evening, I'd like to invite up Father Paul Burkett from Madonna House to say an opening prayer for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Lord God, we thank you for bringing us together this evening. We pray that you will bless Father Dr. Topping, that you will give him the grace and strength in the words that you want us to hear. Help us to be faithful to your will in word and in deed, that we may be open to receive whatever it is you wish to give to us this evening. And we ask your mother's help, intercession, and protection on this time as we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. And Our Lady, Seat of Wisdom, Saint Joseph, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Father. So I'm delighted to see such a good number here in attendance tonight. I believe it's a testament both to our speaker and to the significance of the topic that we'll be exploring tonight. The Dr. Keith Cassidy Lecture Series was launched in 2019 to honor the legacy of Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College's past president, Dr. Keith Cassidy. The series brings distinguished intellectuals to the college to speak on topics of importance to the academic and cultural life of the church. Dr. Cassidy served as president of Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College from 2009 to 2019. During his presidency, and with the great support of his wife, Elizabeth, our institution became a recognized college, earning the right to grant degrees in 2017. Dr. Cassidy's leadership was instrumental in strengthening and stabilizing the college during a key period of its growth. Dr. and Mrs. Cassidy are joining us tonight on live stream from Alberta. So welcome and thank you both for joining us. And of course, I would also like to welcome all of those who are watching online this evening. Most of you here are already familiar with our college, so I'll just say a brief word about who we are as an institution. Our college is a Catholic post-secondary institution offering 3-year and 4-year liberal arts degrees in disciplines such as history, literature, classical and early Christian studies, theology, and philosophy. We also offer breadth courses in subjects like mathematics, sciences, fine arts, music, the social sciences, and in addition to our degree programs, we offer 1-year and 2-year certificates. Now, of course, at the heart of our mission is fidelity to the magisterium and the living tradition of the church. Fidelity to God through the church he founded is the core principle that guides our work. And because of this commitment, we are currently the only college in Canada recognized in the Newman Guide to Faithful Catholic Colleges. If you'd like to learn more about the college, we do have a table at the back. I'd invite you to consider signing up for our newsletter. And I'd also note that as an institution, we do not receive government funding. So, we heavily rely upon the generosity of our supporters to support our work. If you felt inspired to do so, please, I would invite you to consider becoming a contributor. Okay, now on to the business of this evening's lecture. We are privileged to have with us a speaker who is both deeply learned and remarkably engaging. Dr. Ryan N.S. Topping joins us tonight from the great city of Edmonton, Alberta. Dr. Topping is the founding executive director of the Gregory the Great Institute, a nonprofit organization devoted to cultural renewal in Canada through formation programs and research on Catholic life. It's worth noting that Dr. Cassidy himself serves on the advisory board of this organization. I had the opportunity to attend a seminar organized by the Institute outside Edmonton this past summer, and it was a great event. Dr. Topping even lent me a pair of dress shoes after I forgot mine in another city. Since then, he and I have struck up a friendship, and I would say kind of begun to conspire about the renewal of culture in our time. But it's clear that the work he's doing is very important. So I'd encourage you to learn more about it. There's obviously, you'll hear him speak tonight. He also has a table at the back with information. Some more of his background. Dr. Topping is the author of more than 10 books on Catholic education and culture. He holds a doctorate from the University of Oxford and is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. During his academic career, he's taught in both the United Kingdom and the United States, and has helped establish or lead 3 Catholic studies programs in Canada. He's also served as a consultant to both provincial and federal elected officials, and he and his wife are the parents of 10 children and are a founding family of Campion Classical Academy in Alberta. I should say his wife's name is Anna. His most recent book is relevant to our topic tonight, Thinking as Though God Exists, Newman on Evangelizing the Nones. Dr. Topping's lecture tonight is titled Cardinal Newman Among the Doctors. And of course, this topic is particularly timely. In the fall, Cardinal John Henry Newman was declared a doctor of the Church, a recognition of the enduring significance of his theological and spiritual vision. Newman remains one of the most important voices for understanding the relationship between faith, reason, culture, and education in the modern world. In choosing this topic, I thought it would be valuable for our local community and especially for our students to have the opportunity to reflect more deeply on his thought in this important time in which he's been named a new doctor of the Church. So I'm very grateful that we've been able to pull this off tonight. I believe that our speaker, Dr. Topping, is the perfect voice to lead us in such a reflection, so thank you for being with us. One point of order, or just note on the order of the evening before we begin with our lecture. After the lecture, we'll have an opportunity for questions. What we're going to do is set up a microphone in the middle aisle, and I'll ask people to line up behind the microphone. So that will help to facilitate the order of questions. And then following the question period, we'll conclude with a reception and light refreshments. So with that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Topping.
Thanks. Well, it is wonderful to be with you. Thank you, Dr. Crane, for inviting me, and Dr. Oliver, and the rest of the faculty for your kind invitation, for welcoming me generously to share with you this annual lecture. It is a pleasure to be among colleagues and students and friends who are interested in this great work of renewing Catholic education in Canada. And you are indeed one of the few bright spots where this work is shining brightly, a work that Dr. and Mrs. Cassidy gave many of their years to. I'm also very happy to visit my second son tonight, Joseph. I've been able to talk to some of your teachers, and I just want to say great job this year for keeping out of jail. It's wonderful. G.K. Chesterton once remarked that modernity is not one thing, but a cacophony of contradictory things. It's a symphony that's lost its score. It's a landscape of broken mirrors, each shard reflecting glimmers of truth, but none providing a coherent image of the whole of things. Now, if we accept that description, then St. John Henry Cardinal Newman might be the doctor for our time. He is an eminent teacher and healer because he helps us draw together what has been broken. He shows not just what to think, but how to love in the world with an integrated habit of mind. An integrated habit of mind. My goal this evening is to propose a few ways that we might come to share in this integrating vision. To do that, I'd like first to look at the concept of a doctor of the Church as a physician of the soul, and then describe what qualifies Newman as the preeminent dispenser of medicine for the fractures of our particularly broken century. Does that sound okay? Good enough? All right. Well, let's start with the idea of a doctor. The idea of a doctor of the soul is not original to Christianity. It began in the Greek tradition with Socrates, at least. Socrates presents philosophy as not so much a quest to understand the physical elements, but rather as a search for wisdom or knowledge of the soul in relation to the good of the whole. The Jews, in partial imitation of the Greeks, also marked their wise men. So by the time we get to the New Testament, our Lord is called a rabbi, and designated teachers might also be called, like Gamaliel was in Acts 5, a nomo didaskalikos, or a teacher of the law. In the patristic era, the focus on healing shifts from a philosophical method and exegesis of texts to a person. So Clement of Alexandria, he's in the 2nd century, he calls Christ the pedagogos. And St. Augustine invokes the idea of the Christus medicus, the divine physician. So think back to the last time you read the Confessions, Book 10, where Augustine says, "See, I do not hide my wounds. You are the doctor. I am the patient. You are merciful. I am miserable. Medicus est. You are the doctor of our souls." By the time we get to the High Middle Ages, rushing on, the function of teacher and healer become elided or put together. So the time when the Gothic arches are soaring and knights are romping around Jerusalem, and polyphony starts to sing in our ears, the church comes up with a new concept, or formalizes it rather, and it's the concept of the doctor. So in 1298, Boniface VIII, I think it was, declares that the church is going to have now 4 doctors. And this is when we get Gregory and Jerome and Augustine and someone else. Do you know who that is? It's Ambrose. Okay, to mark this elevation, their feasts are given what's called the liturgical rank of doubles. So it's interesting, isn't it, that this instrument of education is really given to us through liturgical means. A century later, Dante celebrates the bright circle of the church's renowned teachers in the Paradiso. And there we have 24 lights of Christendom, led by Bonaventure and St. Thomas. And these guard the faithful, that's us, against darkness, the darkness of error and heresy. Their lights guide us out of the dark forest through which each of us might find himself wandering, as Dante says, do you remember these lines, midway through life's passage? 2 centuries later, in the aftermath of the Reformation, besides excommunicating Queen Elizabeth, one overseeing the defeat of the Turks at the Battle of Lepanto and implementing the Council of Trent, not bad, Pius V ordered an updated edition of the Breviary. And through that means, the church is now going to recognize 4 Eastern doctors: Chrysostom, Basil, Nazianzus, Athanasius, and alongside these, St. Thomas Aquinas, who is now called a doctor. The church capped this number of doctors to about 10 until the 18th century. And then in response to the era of the revolutions, Leo XIII keeps it to about 20. And in the midst of that, in 1879, in Aeterni Patris, he says that St. Thomas Aquinas is now not just doctor, but he's the common doctor. So he's really special. And we're going to talk about how, or I'd like to think with you later on about how Newman relates to St. Thomas. By Vatican II, there were 30 doctors, and then Newman, as Dr. Crane said, last fall became number 38. A doctor, therefore, is an authorized teacher. He or she is an eminent guide to God and the soul. Now, I offer this brief overview to the concept to highlight how the intellectual and the moral features intertwine in the church's thinking. The church confers this title on those who can heal sicknesses of the mind, and by this means, she marks an antibiotic for a given pathogen of the day. Why? Because error is never a private affair. There's sometimes even a madness to crowds. Among the church's doctors, Athanasius fought the false rationalism of the Arians, Teresa, the false mysticism of the Lutherans, and Francis de Sales, the false moralism of the rigorists. So, against what sickness of mind has our newest doctor been called? Well, if you're over 40, or if you've ever had a sniffle, you know that a good diagnosis is in fact half of the cure, isn't it? It's not easy to figure out what's wrong. The scope of the problems within modernity makes it very difficult to describe. What is the healing that we need that perhaps Newman is being invited to offer? Moderns live within let's say, an imminent horizon. We experience what the Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor has called a self-sufficient humanism, or maybe even more aptly what John Paul II called the eclipse of the sense of God and man. That's us. Whatever else modernity is, let's agree that she is the prodigal child of Christendom. Like the wayward son in the parable, modern secular society has left the father's house even while retaining some of his possessions. Indeed, the West's remaining vitality and goodness constitute part of what makes a proper diagnosis difficult to offer. There's a second difficulty. Who of us can say is at the root cause of modernity? Yes, there's original sin, but even as Dr. Shaw will tell you, a lot has happened between Adam and Bede. Credible accounts compete. For instance, if you say the root of modernity is an overemphasis on technologically focused reason, yeah, that's bad. You're going to point to Francis Bacon or maybe Immanuel Kant. If you say that our problem is the rejection of reason, then you could look to Rousseau and Nietzsche. If you say that we are too interested in the id, you talk to Freudian slip. Or if you say that we're sliding into collectivism, you say it's Marx. If you say it's too much the individual, you say it's Locke, and so on. The rejection of Christian premises and practices is so widespread that one can feel as though the church is left swinging at shadows that vanish as soon as they appear. And it's no wonder that at the eve of World War I, Pope Pius X called modernism the heresy of heresies, which incidentally draws heavily upon Newman's account. But it's so easy to be extreme in youth, isn't it? Operating with a surgeon's precision, well, that takes patience, and that's hard. Modernity is not all good, but nor is it all bad. It doesn't have one source, but many. We can be happy for penicillin, even if we lament the hydrogen bomb. Whatever else modernity is, let's agree that it's marked by, shall we say, extreme fragmentation. Reason split from faith, the individual from the community, the past from the present, and the head from the heart. To help with that healing, the church now encourages us to look to the man who lived through the birth pangs or the openings of our civilizational crisis. We'll turn to his remedies in just a minute, but I think it'd be helpful to briefly sketch his life. Why? Because it's not only Newman's ideas, but it's also his example that the church is putting forward to us as a means of our healing. So, who is John Henry Newman? I was trying to think before I was coming here, what does everyone know about Newman? Do you like him already? Is he your distant, your second cousin? You've been living with him now for 25 years. Or is he sort of the new kid on the block? I think it really depends. You know, if you get into these circles, like people who like Chesterton, they're sort of mad about him, and they know nothing else but Chesterton. It can seem that way. Everything is about Chesterton. Newman is like that too. You know, once you get into Newman, it's a vortex. It's like you can't get out of it. Thomists are like that too, aren't they? You know, once you get going, it's like the party's over. Like, let me talk to someone else. Okay, so I'll tell you just a couple of things about Newman's life. He lives between 1801 and 1890, so there we've got a picture. During this time, there are a lot of things that were changing, economically, politically, etc. He lived in the long era between the Napoleonic Wars and, let's say, the second term of Sir John A. Macdonald. Just to give you a historical marker. That was an important time, wasn't it? During these decades in Britain, Catholics could still not hold office. And Catholics could not go to universities. In fact, one of the great debates, this is a side note, in Britain at this time among the hierarchy was whether or not a Catholic kid could go to, or a Catholic young man could go to Oxford University. Why? Because they thought they'd be corrupted by the morals of these upright Anglicans. how things have changed. In Victorian England, Protestants widely regarded Catholics as socially backward and educationally inferior, that is, until Newman converted. Newman's life neatly divides according to an early, middle, and late period. In his youth centered around one place, Oxford. As a teacher, or don as they called them there, Newman was beloved by his students. He would hold tutor's tea at his College of Oriel, where he would invite students to come for conversations about how the literature they were reading and the theology they looked at was touching their head and their heart. He would take them for rambles in the surrounding countryside, and he would take an interest in their spiritual and personal moral journeys. At 23, he took holy orders in the Anglican Communion, and he immediately added to his teaching life the duties of visiting parishioners. He wanted to get to know everybody in the community, and so he spent a lot of time going for dinners and teas. Eventually, not too long after that, he became, he was one of the leading figures of this thing called the Oxford Movement. And basically, the Oxford Movement was the one bid in the Anglican Church to make it have more smells and bells, to make it feel more Catholic, feel more of substance. And they were trying to look back to the early church fathers, and Newman was part of this. Prophet that he was, he feared that the Reformation had too closely allied with subjectivism in religion and paved the way to agnosticism in politics. Newman was ever a seeker of truth about the first things, and his own deep study in religion and philosophy, and particularly the Greek fathers, gradually drew him closer to Rome. Now, not everybody was pleased at this, as you can imagine. I mentioned that Newman was a popular preacher. Young men especially would go to flock and hear him. His Sunday services at St. Mary's Cathedral, which were in central Oxford, were a hit. They were like learned essays. And if you want to get to know Newman, here are a couple that you might look at. The first is Sermon 1, the intellect is the instrument of religious training. This is for the Feast of St. Monica. So Sermon 1. Sermon 6 on the season of Epiphany, which is glorious. And probably his most famous is called Sermon 10, the second spring. This was given when the hierarchy, the Catholic hierarchy, was reinstated in England. So now you could have an official diocese in the country. And so Newman, new convert, preaches this amazing story. Do you know Father Ian Boyd? Anyone come across him? Okay, yeah, Father Ian Boyd. Well, Father Ian Boyd passed a couple of years ago, God bless him. And Father Boyd is one of these priests who just knew everything about everything. One time we had him over to our house for tea. We like poetry, and Father Boyd likes poetry. So I started reciting to him a selection from the second spring. We mourn of the blossoms of May because they are to wither, but we know withal that May is one day to have revenge upon November by the silent revolution. Okay, anyways, so I go on, and then he just picks up and says the whole sermon. It's amazing. People used to know Newman. My wife and I, this is again a side note, I'll return quickly. My wife and I like to collect textbooks. Kind of nerdy, nerdy homeschooling parents, but we do collect textbooks from early 20th century Canada. That's our niche. Anyways, we've got one on our shelf from authorized for use in the province of Saskatchewan about 1910 or something. And what's in the back? A poem by Newman. Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom. But it's in Latin. Can you imagine that? This is for kids in grade 6, 7, 8, I think. Okay, so Newman was well loved. And if you don't love him yet, you've got to love Newman. Your life is just going to get better and better. For 15 years, on Sunday evenings, the young would flock to hear the master talk about old things and new, with sympathy and learning. But the drift kept moving in the wrong direction. Newman's homilies nudged his listeners more to tradition, not less, closer to Rome, not Canterbury. And heads of colleges would notice, and it's said that what would happen is tutors would begin deliberately to plan events that would happen on Sunday night so that the young men couldn't go listen to Newman. But they still came. In 1845, after a long and arduous search, and at great cost to his reputation, Newman forsook his, by now, eminent position in English society as a man of letters to join the Church of Rome. His middle years thus began as a period of disorientation, because this conversion cost him a lot. There's a story about Newman when he was about 18. Now, Oxford for anybody is a lovely and enchanting place, but for Newman it symbolized everything that is sweet and lovely about the life of intellectual vigor and youth, the kind of innocence that we can bring to our study and to our friendships when we're about many of your ages. Everything's open, and for Newman, Oxford always symbolized that. Well, at some point during his daily walks around the medieval cobblestone streets, he noticed a set of snapdragon flowers growing out of the side of the wall. And he loved those little flowers. 40 years later, when he was a very famous person and loved by most, but hated by some, and all kinds of troubles and worries, and he's writing this story of his life called the Apologia pro vita sua. He's trying to defend himself. Apologia is in defense, so that his reputation isn't maligned, because it was being maligned. 40 years later, he recalls this story of the snapdragons, and for him, he said that those snapdragons, yes, he said that they represented his perpetual residence at Oxford. And when he left the university after his conversion, so he left the town, he went back to pause at the gates of his old college, and there he touched the wall to say a silent goodbye to those snapdragons of his youth, and he never went to Oxford again until I think he was about in his 80s. I think he did go back because he got an honorary doctorate from Trinity. But he never returned for his whole life, except for maybe the end. Do you know these lines from Tennyson? "'Twas better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all." Yeah, that characterizes Newman's rather sentimental heart. He was easily wounded by love and friendship. Intellectual work was always in some way an affair of the heart for Newman, a concept that's embedded in his motto, cor ad cor loquitur. Heart speaks unto heart. Aren't you loving Newman even a little bit more now? I do. After his conversion, Newman devoted his enormous energy to advancing Catholic causes, and his output is amazing. During his life, he published some 37 volumes, which includes a celebrated book of poetry. I don't know if you know The Dream of Gerontius. You think of the Dante's Divine Comedy. The Dream of Gerontius is a little bit like that, but a quicker read. Try it out. 2 novels, numerous historical and theological books, in addition to some 20,000 plus letters to friends. Now, whether it was establishing the Oratorian religious community in England, a Catholic university in Ireland, or a school for boys in Birmingham, Newman was indefatigable in his service. Many sought his advice, and many wanted to be his friend. He never failed to encourage others, as he did himself, of God's particular call for greatness that each of us has. Do you know this line? Here it is. God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have my mission. I am a link in the chain, a bond of connection between persons. He has not created me for naught. He has created me for good. I shall do his work. I will be an angel of peace, a preacher of truth in my own place, if I but keep his commandments and serve him in my calling. That's Cardinal Newman. God's work, not our work. Newman's service bore particular fruit in what we might call his later period, which extended even beyond his death. Now, I should say, before I move on, I'll teary-eyed about Cardinal Newman, that a lot of what he did never worked out. And in this way, I've reflected, my wife has often commented that I'm a little bit like Cardinal Newman. For example, he was once taken to court for slander, and he lost. He was made editor of a Catholic journal and dismissed. Even his tenure as head of the Catholic University, he found, was cut short due to the intercession of some unhelpful clergy. Dr. Crane, beware. Alas, but he planted seeds, and those seeds did bear fruit. His generous fidelity and his massive intellectual labor, this is what it did. It lifted Catholicism out of the dark shadows into the glorious light of day in the English-speaking world. And the effect of his conversion in 1845 was long-lasting. The first wave of converts largely came among or from those Anglicans who were interested in climbing up the candlestick. For example, Oscar Wilde. Do you know of him? Kind of a sordid fellow, hey? As a sidebar, he was interested in Catholicism as a young man at your age, 20. But his father said he'd disinherit him if he went through with it. He was secretly meeting with Oratorian priests and having these little, tit-a-tat. Imagine it, like, if you just get to know Oscar Wilde, but he was sort of the bad boy. I don't know who the bad boy is now. There's so many bad boys. Someone was telling me about the Super Bowl last week. I haven't had the heart to watch the show, but there's some rap star. What's his name? Bad Bunny, yeah. What a name, that's fantastic. Bad Bunny. Boy, that's scary. Anyways, okay, Oscar Wilde was the Bad Bunny of the late 19th century. And, but he was a deathbed convert because of Newman. Also, Father Gerard Manley Hopkins, you know him? God's grandeur, the world is charged with the grandeur of God, it will flame out like shining from Shukpa. So, maybe one of the best poets of his age. He was also personally received by Newman in, I think, 1866. Then you get the second wave of converts. These are also literary folks, like Father Robert Hugh Benson. His dad, if I'm remembering correctly, was the Archbishop of Canterbury. Yeah, I think that's right? Okay. He's got a great book. I don't recall the name, but it's his story, his conversion to Rome. It's just beautiful. Don't read Scott Hahn. I mean, Scott Hahn's good, but Benson's better. Father Ronald Knox, witty. He was writing Latin plays when he was about 6 years old. Also convert. Okay, and then G.K. Chesterton, who came into the church in 1922. During the middle of the 20th century, there's a third wave of converts and people who were brought on his coattails, like Harvard historian Christopher Dawson, the novelist Evelyn Waugh of Brideshead Revisited fame, and also those writers sometimes read called the Inklings. So much for his life. What remedy can he offer to us? If the pathogen of modern life is fragmentation, Newman's antidote I'd like to propose to you is integration. I propose that this integration can be partially experienced by us if we take him up as our guide in three different directions. The first is in adopting his understanding of development. The second is in replicating his experience of the liberal arts. And the third is in mimicking his efforts at friendship. I'll go through those three. So, development, education, friendship. First, development. Now, I know the word change in certain Catholic circles sounds almost as though it's spelt with 4 letters. Speaking myself as a lover of Latin things and even the Latin Mass, to the quip, how many traditionalists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, you know the reply. But Newman's medicine here can do much good. If you are under 30 and you have grown up within a non-binary, non-coherent social order, you've been told in 1,000 ways that the only truth is your truth, and that certainty is the only change, or the only reality, the only thing that bides. Sorry, let me say that again. The only truth is yours, and the only certainty is change. Does that make more sense? Good. Well, sooner or later, all of us pretending we're guests of Alice in Wonderland will only take us so far. In fact, there are moral laws. In fact, diversity is not always your strength. And in fact, boys do have special body parts. It's true. On the principle of what goes up must come down, widespread moral indifference eventually provokes a reply. Swings happen, and this is not all bad. We do need renewal. We need the fierce and focused energy that comes of these experiences to lift ourselves out of the atmosphere of present decay. Yes, yes, we need a fire that's burning within our hearts. But, as Newman's great teacher Aristotle says in Medio Stat Virtu, in the mean is where the virtue is. Having emerged after wading through 10,000 murky hours of the internet with a newfound conviction that truth, thank God, is real, is a great gain. Yes. But this is not yet to form a Christian mind. Nor does it qualify us to stand as grand judge and jury over every political and theological debate of the day. It's precisely to guard against oversimplifications and abuses of the past that Newman's idea of the development of doctrine can come to our aid. To live is to change, he once wrote, and to be perfect is to have changed often. If this incites you, go take up and read. See if his 7 tests for authentic development ring true to you, or if you can beat him at his game. Those who think of themselves as occupying various, you might say, political corners in the church will all do better, all of us will do better for taking up Newman on his idea of development. For the ill-catechized baby boomer, God bless you, who feels the church is merely a democracy, as much as for the newly converted sophomore, God bless you, enjoying his first rounds of pints with Aquinas, Newman offers the antidote of a living, breathing, intelligent tradition. He heals the separation that we all of us feel and can't help but feel between past and present. He shows the church doesn't change her positions, but rather she unfolds her mind over time. So, one benefit of adopting Newman's understanding of development is that it teaches us a proper love and regard for tradition. But what do we mean by that? Well, tradition is simply that which is passed on. Unfortunately, there is no shortcut to learning it. Alas. The second way we can experience healing, then, is by engaging in what Newman called a liberal education. A liberal education is, you might say, in shorthand, his reply to the notion of the man or woman who has one idea. Have you met people like that? They have a couple of ideas that everything has to circle back around. Well, Newman says that this is not really the thing. This is not us at our best. And so we need this expansive view, this, what he calls actually true enlargement of mind, that a rigorous liberal education will give us. In the idea of a university, he argues that a true student, a true liberal arts student, is like one who eventually gets to climb a mountain peak. It's very hard work, but the view is worth it. And what the view gives is a vision of the whole circle of knowledge, so that we know something, at least a little bit, about everything, truly. This takes work. You need time, and you need at least a little bit of love for books. You need some teachers, you need some leisure, and you need some friends. But what this form of learning offers more than repays the effort. One of the qualities that it nurtures is what we might call an architectonic quality of mind. The ability to see, in other words, how biology relates to poetry, mathematics to ethics, love and romance to finance. Take heed, Joseph. And how all of these things are rooted in the experience of prayer and the knowledge of God. And from what I can tell, yes, seed of wisdom. remains one of the few places in our country where Newman's ideal is even attempted. Why? Why have we made ourselves into eunuchs? C.S. Lewis has this beautiful line, doesn't he? We castrate and then bid the geldings be fruitful. Don't think it through. But effectively, in Newman's view, that's what you do when you don't expose yourself to a rigorous liberal arts education. You cast yourself into a world of conflict and of loves and of great trials and enterprises, but with no more than sticks and stones. So may your healing ministry here flourish, and may it receive the kind of financial and episcopal backing in all quarters that it deserves. Lastly, the last note I'll mention is personal influence. This is the final medicine. Newman knew the truth that truth is not a bloodless formula merely. As a preacher at St. Mary's, his silver voice reached the heart because the students knew the man behind the words. One proof of this came, for example, in 1849. This is after his main teaching career. In that year, a choleric epidemic broke out. Yes, and Newman had just founded the Oratorian community, so a few friends together, priests and brothers and priests living together. Now at this time, many of the medical establishment in town left and vacated the place. Well, what did Newman do? No. He went around to the slums and the pest houses, and there he gave last rites to the dead, and he prayed with those who were dying. Now, I think that is one way that people will listen to you. Reason has its place, but the heart is not reached by reason alone. Of course, it needs the imagination. It needs the warmth of human affection and love always shows itself through sacrifice. I mentioned also Newman's letters. He wrote lots. I did a little bit of math. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because, by the way, I've always been a liberal arts teacher, not a mathematics teacher. But I think it's something like over 60 years, he wrote more than, or about 6 letters a week. Over 60 years. The man had friends, and he knew how to keep them. How about us? Well, some of you know how to keep friends. Yes, you do. And you're in a place where friendship is being founded and nurtured and flourishing. But real friendship requires long walks and common work in pursuit of common loves. If I may venture an observation, even before a liberal education, really what we need is we need the stuff that Dr. Beresford loves. We need to have our hands in gardens and dirt. We need to have the experience of poetry. We need to have the opportunity to sing folk music together. We need, you might say, an immersion in Christian culture. There's no use reasoning about God, death, and love if you've never had the practice of praying, if you've never gotten hurt in a football game, and if you've never held a girl's hand. Right? You need all these things. These are the, you might say, the stuff or the phenomena of life. They are the preambles to a liberal education, and they're what is missing for most of us. We need a springtime of culture, I would say, of raw experiences of beauty and friendship, of pilgrimages in spring, of work and garden in summer, and singing parties in the winter. Now, we may not be able to establish a university like Newman did, but each of us in our own circles of friendships can do things like plan a Shakespeare watching party in the summer, even when your teachers don't make you. Or maybe a poetry night together, even when there's no assignment. And the admission is a bottle of wine and a poem. Try reading and reciting Newman's Lead Kindly Light. See where the party goes. I bet it'll be fun. Let's go back to our thread. To read Newman is itself an act of immersion in this thing that we call tradition. To one wrestling with the way that truth can remain constant amid the amplification of ideas over time, try out his essay on the development of Christian doctrine, 1845. To one who wants to know the difference between utilitarian formation and a classical one, try his idea of the university. By the way, on the side, It's a series of lectures. And he's giving them to a group sometimes of like 12 people. This is the most famous book ever written on university education. Isn't that amazing? Small and beautiful things, great and noble things often come about because of small, cramped experiences. Middlemarch. George Eliot once said that the only fodder you need is a small village, and you can write about anything, because everything happens among just a few people. To another who's experiencing the fever of doubt, try his spiritual autobiography that I mentioned already, the Apologia. In all these ways, both by precept and example, Newman walks with us now as a doctor uniquely qualified to heal the pathogens of our time. Now, we've been speaking thus far about the sicknesses of modernity as though those are things outside of us and far away for those bad and lonely folks. I'd like to conclude by considering with you another sort of objection. The sort of objection that might be felt by people who are somewhat spiritually coherent, let's say, spiritually healthy. Here's the question: what does Newman add to St. Thomas? While Newman has now been named co-patron of education, doesn't Thomas retain the position of universal doctor? And therefore, is he not preeminent? Can Newman really say anything that Thomas didn't say better? And yes, I'm looking at you. Well, let me answer this way, hopefully in words you understand. To the first I reply, distinguo. Preeminence does not imply solitude. Neither the common doctor, let alone the church, has ever viewed Aquinas as the only teacher. Aquinas' treatment of tradition provides ample demonstration that truth has a symphonic quality. In his Summa, for example, he cites the Summa Theologiae, he cites some 100 authors. In addition to Scripture, St. Augustine gets 3,000, Aristotle gets just over 2,000, Dionysius the Areopagite gets just under 2,000, and so on. Everyone from Gregory, Boethius, Cicero, Jews, Muslims, just about anyone that Thomas could get his hands on in Latin, finds their way into his book. Truth is heard better when it is sung in a choir. So no, in principle, honoring Newman in no way should lessen our appreciation for the common doctor. To the second. But does Newman say anything better than St. Thomas? To this I reply, sic et non. Yes and no. Thomas and Newman have much in common, but each one throws his energy against a different set of problems, against a different wall, you might say. Thomas is the better system builder, but Newman is the more expert explorer of the soul. Both provide maps or guides to the structures of the real, but they are not equally interested in the same parts of the real. Even more, where St. Thomas tells us what is true by synthesizing the whole, Newman, you might say, helps us figure out a way how to recover it, recover a vision. Newman writes after, helpfully, the subjective turn. While St. Thomas builds, to put it into an image, while St. Thomas builds a cathedral of ideas, many of the doors to that cathedral are now blocked to us. We simply cannot get in. Our access is limited. So Newman offers a kind of backstage pass. He teaches us how to walk through these doors in an age when we've come to doubt even if we can get outside of our own head. From correcting our vision from the outside to healing our perceptions of the inside of human experience, St. Thomas and Newman provide, I think, complementary rather than competing models of how we might come to know and love the true, the good, and the beautiful. Here's a final reason, ad baculum, to read Newman, even if you already love Thomas. The Church simply recommends it. Surely it would be alien to Catholic thinking and a lapse into both Reformation and Eastern Orthodox heresies to suppose that our complete grasp of truth stopped at one still point in time. The Book of Common Prayer wants you to stop at the Council of Chalcedon in 451. And the Russian Patriarch of Russian Orthodoxy, he says you have to stop at Nicaea too in 787. That's not the Catholic way. Catholic means universal, whole. This includes taking into account the whole of being, and that includes the whole of history. Since the first Christmas, the Church has met in councils at a rate of, I think, 80 a year. One every 80 years, rather. And I see no reason to think that this process of articulation should stop anytime soon. So Dr. 38 is with us among the rest until the end, and so the Church bids us to get to know him. To conclude, our civilization looks a little bit like an orchard after a tornado. The trees are still standing, but the branches lie broken and its good fruit is scattered. The tornado we mentioned earlier, the storms of Kantian reason and Nietzschean will, has left us to mend many broken limbs. Concepts like human rights and freedom that once were nourished by the Christian trunk have been severed and now serve often grave wrongs. Technological advances in free marks have become very much mixed blessings for all of us. Conscience, which Newman once named the aboriginal vicar of Christ, now stands robeless and naked for little more than naked self-interest. Separated from their sources in Christian culture, these ideas and institutions have begun to carry with them unwholesome smells. The fences are being pulled and dogs are prowling, and we wonder, is the orchard going to survive? Pope Benedict XVI once said that saints are made to shore up the weaknesses of a given age. And I believe that Newman shows us something of how to heal ours. Whatever else that will mean, it must include helping us to put Humpty Dumpty, the Humpty Dumpty of our civilization, back together again as we prepare for the next Christendom, whatever that is going to mean. Newman shows us the virtues of an integrating habit of mind. So let us thank God that we have a new doctor in our midst, one who joins the head to the heart, who leads us out of shadows into light, and who can help us recover a vision of the whole. I conclude with the newly composed prayer for his office, October 9. Here it is, and let this be our end. Oremus. O God, who bestowed on your priest, St. John Henry Newman, the grace to follow your kindly light and find peace in your church, graciously grant that through his intercession and example, we may be led out of shadows and images into the fullness of your truth. Amen. Amen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Topping. I believe your passion for Newman is contagious. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Yeah. I was very intrigued by your comments on Aquinas and Newman, especially because part of my dissertation focused on Aquinas and some ways in which Newman can kind of develop his thought. So that's very interesting. All right, so as I mentioned, we've got a mic here in the middle. So I'd invite anybody who would like to ask questions to approach the mic, and we can start a lineup behind it. I learned this evening we have a switcher for our live stream, so you'll actually be able to see the speakers as well at the mic.
Okay, thank you.
Me? There we go. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Topping. That was a wonderful talk. Much food for thought there. I want to raise a question about Newman's two novels. And I'm wondering if you have any insight as to why he wasn't a great novelist. is, one would think he has all the ingredients that ought to go into making a great novel, and some of the people, as you mentioned, who were inspired by Newman were great novelists, like Evelyn Waugh. So why was the mentor of Evelyn Waugh not able to produce great fiction the way Evelyn Waugh was?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, there's a rule of thumb that anytime someone starts asking you, when did you stop beating your wife? You should say, I didn't. So, who says Newman's not a great novelist? I mean, I think he's a very good novelist. In fact, I think the only reason why Evelyn Waugh wrote that book, Bridie, is because Newman was such a great novelist. So, but maybe you could turn the knife a little bit sharper. And what part of Newman only wrote 2 novels? That's definitely true. So at least from that point of view, he could not be considered a great novelist. You know, he didn't really develop that art. And I have heard it said that Newman isn't a great novelist. But so I would say I'm probably not the best person to give much insight to that, because I haven't felt that so much. But you know, Newman was so many things. They give the guy a break. He was a violinist. He's a musician. He's beautiful. One time there's a story. He was in the midst of playing, and the E string popped, and he just retuned. He transposed on the fly. You know. It's amazing. So he was a polymath. You know, if that word ever has meaning, it's Newman. He could have been anything and excelled. There's a biography about him called The Imperial Intellect. You know, he's just a master. Why didn't he pursue that line? You know, I'm not sure. I think when he lives in the 19th century, it's an era of great writers. And there's a famous writer from that time who calls Newman the greatest writer of the era. So I'm not sure. I don't have much to say that's helpful, I think. However, I would say that while he's a very good poet, I don't think he's of the highest rank. I have more opinions about his poetry, I would say. Why is that? I don't know. It's very difficult. C.S. Lewis once said that you shouldn't ever look to someone to be both a good writer and a good teacher. You know, rarely are these skills combined, and it just happens that Newman got 9 out of 10 right. Yes, sir?
What was Newman like as a child?
Keep going.
Like, where did he go to school? Did he ever get into trouble? That sort of thing?
I understand. Thank you. Newman was a perfect boy. He always obeyed his father. He always practiced his piano. And he was never unkind to his younger sister. So about Newman's life, you know, Newman was, I don't know much about him when he was a really young boy, but he had a conversion experience when he was quite young. There was this thing called, so what's going on in Newman's early life is you've got the era of the revolutions, the French Revolution, rationalism, materialism is rampant, and then as the project begins to crumble and collapse, you have this counter movement, which is sometimes called the Romantic Rebellion. Sir Kenneth Clarke, who, by the way, is another deathbed British convert of civilization. He has a fine book called The Romantic Rebellion. Anyways, you've got this counter movement that goes on, it's like a scream. We know that materialism can't satisfy the heart, but what are we going to do about it? And you have very Christian elements that are trying to revive the Gothic and revive piety and devotion. You have these groups like the Nazarenes from Germany, a group of young men basically decide they're going to be painter monks. They move to Rome together, and they devote their whole lives to painting beautiful Catholic art in this effort to revive something of what was being lost in the era of the revolutions. So Newman is growing up right at that moment. And he is touched by an evangelical teacher, and he has this conversion to what we would call evangelicalism when he's very young. And then when he came to college, he met people that were really good at linking the head and the heart. And he was ever grateful for those teachers. And then what he wanted, he thought that original enthusiasm in the sense of the personal relation to God, to Christ, I should be addressing someone. He retained that, but he was able to link it to the larger tradition. So beyond just being obedient to his mom and dad and being a very precocious and intelligent young man, he also was able to find a way to heal head and heart in his own experience and pass that on to others.
Hey there. My name, wait, what? Sorry, I was about to introduce myself.
Who are you?
My name is Miles. We've already met. But
Yes, nice to
my
see
question is,
you
did
again.
Newman ever have any bad experiences in education? Because, he was in Oxford and this is glorious, scholar and probably surrounded by many like him. Did he have any bad experiences in education? Did he write about the crisis or predict the crisis of education that we're experiencing today? Because I think he, like you said, he's kind of the solution to the crisis. So any insights on that, I think, would be fascinating for my own reading and interest.
So there's a lot that you've actually said there. No, that's fine. I mean, you can amplify as you wish or not, but so did Newman feel something of the crisis that we are experiencing? Is that the thrust of what you're saying?
Did he, precisely that. And did he, I guess, predict, like a lot of people could see,
Yes.
if education is going down the road that it is, we're going to...
You think there's a problem?
I think there's a severe problem. Yeah.
You should make a movie about that.
Thank you. Well, I actually did. It's called The Great Indoctrination. You should all watch it. So did he do that? Or no,
Sure.
he didn't do that. But did he, predict that or
Okay,
write about
well, thanks.
it?
No, good question. Okay, so Newman, yes, here, look, I think there are three great prophets in the 19th century. One is Nietzsche. Very few in the 19th century were as perceptive about what was coming. He predicted wars, like reading him, it's like the apocalypse is coming and he knows it. We've killed God. He's got a parable of the madman. Okay, so Nietzsche perceived that once God is gone, reason is going. And once reason is left, what's left? Violence. Okay, so this is what Nietzsche is anticipating for the 20th century, and he was right. When Hitler made his first visit to Italy to meet Mussolini, he brought a series of books, leather bound. Can you guess what it was? The collected works of Nietzsche. Okay, so there's guilt by association. The second great prophet is Leo the 13th. One way that us Catholics, I think, can revive, and I'm coming to your questions, a little bit of a roundabout, but we'll get there. People love the Catholic social tradition in name, but very few of us get the opportunity to know its richness and its depth. One thing that I always find helpful is the same Pope, Leo the 13th, is the one who wrote Rerum Novarum, so that's 1891. That's the thing that starts the Catholic social teaching tradition. He also wrote Aeterni Patris. He also started the great Thomistic revival that went to a fury up until Vatican II, and then kind of petered out. Including that, by the way, that revival was experienced deeply in Canada. We kind of forget, we think we're always the little kid on the block. Actually, Canada was one of these centers of Thomism up until about 1970. Chiefly through PIMS, but not only, also through Dr. Crane's alma mater. Okay. The third great prophet of modernity was Newman, and yes, he absolutely predicted and anticipated the kind of breakdown of social order that was about to happen, including in education. It's amazingly prescient. People are like that. Another person you might consider along this vein would be George Grant, to describe why is Canada unraveling. There's a little book he wrote called Lament for a Nation in I think he published it in 1968, if I recall. So yes, we need to pay attention to these sorts of folks. And Newman has a, so short answer, yes. His reply, two things. One is he did stuff. He didn't just talk about it, preach doom and gloom. He went and founded educational enterprises, including a school for boys and the Catholic University of Ireland, and was a great inspiration because of these efforts. So there's a lot to say on that, but maybe that's enough. Thanks for that question. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Topping, for coming. As someone who is currently even just caught up in that vortex you were describing of Newman's thought, I just find myself absolutely giddy to have you come and give a talk about him. But just to what you were just saying, that prophesying the breakdown of education, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to the magnificence of the pursuit of the liberal arts and what is really true wisdom, not simply, an accumulation of facts and knowledge, but really its organization into the whole. And because what I've encountered, at least in modern education and the wider culture, is sort of this, almost this, you get perceived as almost alien if you take somewhat of, if you have somewhat of a disinterested philosophical interest. So sometimes that gets associated with like spiritual things. But perhaps you could just speak to the magnificence, again, of pursuit of liberal arts for just the layman and the lifelong pursuit of learning and what dignity that has to the human person and where it fits into the Catholic culture.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask, what are you doing in your life? Are you, a fraud question?
I'm a first year student here at Our Lady Seat of Wisdom.
Okay.
I'm a mature student. And
Yes. Not like the immature ones. I've heard of them.
mature in age, but all the gentlemen know here that I am.
I understand. You're a student.
I'm a student. But
Tell me about your love life. Just kidding. No. I just wanted to understand where you were coming from. Are you a teacher? Are you an administrator? Are you a student? Yeah.
no, I actually did convert because of picking up Newman.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I'm being
God bless you.
received to the church
Yeah.
at Easter time. And,
You will be, or you were?
No, will be.
Will be. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. Anyways.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your not telling me about your love life. Okay, Newman. Oh my goodness. Haven't you met people like this before? You get into a room with them and you feel in love with them. You just want to, be around them. I remember that my wife and I were at this party a couple of years ago. It was in Calgary, and this was a Christmas party. It was connected to a school, and anyways, we're there, and there's this older lady, this matronly woman, and I'd say my wife and I both fell in love with her. Just being with her for an hour, talking with her. There are certain people who can radiate a kind of goodness. And goodness is not always radiating in that way. Often it's very hidden beneath warts and sullenness, and you have to go dig around. But sometimes that goodness is allowed to be something that's effervescent. It glows. Anyways, Newman is kind of like that. If you just spend a little bit of time with Newman, you might fall in love with him, and you just as the Bible says, if you find a wise man, hang on to him, darken his doors, and never leave it. Okay, and Newman's account of education is like that. It'll make you happy. Your whole life will just be filled with more joy, because what the liberal arts tradition is it's a way of loving the whole of things. It's a way of being receptive to all that is good. So it starts with the premise of gratitude. Whereas you might say modern education begins with, to use an image, Benedict XVI uses this image. He says it's more like living within a concrete bunker, where everything is controlled, atmospheric pressure is monitored by our own artifice. Now our own artifice is amazing. We've got these things, foams, these gizmos. Bzz, bzz, it's good. But the real is even better. Think of the cave allegory. You know, we all start at the bottom of that cave because of concupiscence. So Newman's vision of liberal education is really the crystallization of a long meditation on what it means to have the mind and the heart turned inexorably to the one and true and beautiful good that is God. And if that doesn't excite you, you should just go home. So there's more to say. If you wanted to start with Newman, start with his big Lieto speech. It's his shortest. It'll take you 5 minutes. It's the speech that he gave when he was made a cardinal. So it's at the end of his life, and he describes his life work. Or you could pick up the idea of the university, or read that sermon number 1, intellect as the instrument of religious training. It's just a beautiful meditation where he begins with reflection on Our Lady and then just draws you in, and oh yes, you want to fall in love with Newman. Okay, thanks very much for that. You're so respectful. You're all standing way at the back here.
Thank you, Dr. Topping.
Yes.
So my question has to do with, I loved in your presentation how you expressed how Newman discovered the tradition of the church, and
Yes.
it led him to the heart of Rome and to the magisterium. It made him Catholic. Today we see an interesting thing happening where love of tradition is turning people away from the magisterium to reject recent popes and even councils. In the name of tradition, they want to go to an earlier version of the church, which makes them reject what we have here now. And of course, this is a huge problem that we have. How would Newman bring light into that situation? How would he bring medicine into a situation like that, where people turn tradition into an idol, and which makes them, in a sense, leave the church and go off in a different direction? What would he say to them?
Sure. No, thanks.
Thank you.
Good question. Well, I think Newman would say, let's go for a little ramble. You know, let's talk about it. Why are you feeling this way? You know, it's always the case, isn't it? When you have extremes, they are provocative. So if you have an ecclesial situation where you do have the breakdown of mental and moral disciplines, which is in fact the situation in many countries after the Second Vatican Council, not everywhere, not always, but in many pockets, when you have that kind of almost whole-scale breakdown of the ethos and the culture of the church, then people start to feel like they're drowning, and you need a lifeline. And sometimes those lifelines are the right ones, and sometimes the ones that are, you know, not quite the right ones. Or maybe they're close. So I think Newman's, I don't know, that's a complicated topic, I would say. But I think Newman's first reply, I think, you know, the way that Newman will want to convert the world or, you know, heal us is it's chiefly, it starts through personal sanctity, and then it builds out from friendship from there. You know, he did try institutions, and institutions matter. We need them, but they're secondary. The primary thing is friendship. I think that's how Newman would begin an answer to that.
Thank you so much for your talk, Dr. Topping. One of the things that came up a bit in your talk, and something that I think was really important in Newman's life, was this idea of personal influence as the means of education and I guess leadership more generally. So many of our students go on to teach, become educators in different ways. So I wondered if you had anything you wanted to expand upon regarding that idea of kind of personal influence, or how to develop it.
Okay. Of how to develop one's capacity to have friendship. Okay. Well, you know Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice? It's not a bad book, eh? Often people, you know, before you're married, you're thinking about, how do I get married? One great way to get married is read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And the reason being is it's this. First of all, the girl's going to be impressed. And you got to start somewhere. But secondly, what the novel initiates us into is this idea that true friendship is only brought between lovers who have virtue. So each of them have their own particular vice. One has pride and the other has prejudice. And they're not worthy of each other until they overcome their pride and their prejudice. Well, isn't all of life like that? There's no way that if one aspires to, let's say, leadership or to have influence, like why do you want influence? It's such a dumb thing to want. Who wants influence? If you get it, it's a burden. Really, Plato says, anyone who aspires to leadership, anyone who wants to be the top dog of some place, that's the one you shoot. Get rid of them. Service is about servanthood, eh? Leadership is about, in some way, offering something that is needed to a community, to others. That's the core of it. So if you want to grow in friendship, I think Newman would say, and I think he models as well, that really the focus on the first things first. What is your mission in life? And your mission is to answer God's call to greatness and friendship in the life of the Trinity amidst the saints. So that's the first thing, and then everything else flows. And some of us are going to be politicians. Some of us are going to be teachers, doctors, homemakers. Some of us are going to be monks or live monkish lives. It's amazing how many wild paths there are to goodness. So, but the main thing is pursue relentlessly a life of love of God, which means a long discipline in the arts of virtue. And as you do that, you will become more capable of beautiful friendships.
Hello, Dr. Topping.
Hello.
My name is Ethan Bagshaw. I'm a third-year student here at Our Lady Seat of Wisdom College. And my question tonight is, how did Newman's experience at Oxford influence his idea of the Catholic University and the sort of three ideals of integration?
Okay, thanks. Good question. So how did his experience at Oxford? I think profoundly. Let me point to something concrete, and then we'll just stop there because there's a lot to say. Okay, so in Oxford and Cambridge, at the older schools, the older medieval style universities in England, what you have are three buildings that matter. One is the chapel, the other is the library, and the other is the refectory or the dining hall. And this is because these little academic communities grew out of the monastic experience, fundamentally. So how did Newman's experience of Oxford spill over? Well, he knew that you have to have these elements. They have to go together. There's no such thing as a Big E education that's merely technocratic, only online, experienced without real contact. So education, formation, it's caught more than it's taught. It is taught too, but it's chiefly caught. So I think that would be the way. He lived it, and the experience of dining together, of praying together, of having these elements of life interweave, kind of like what you have here. Many people are jealous, by the way, of your good life here, because it is much more of an integrated ideal. It's much closer to what Newman had and wanted than most other places. So I think that's how. An integrated habit of mind is formed by an integrated mode of living.
Hi, Dr. Topping. Thank you for your talk. I have a three-part question.
Okay.
So, first part
I have
is,
a pen. Yes?
That might be necessary. First part, why did Newman become an Oratorian?
Okay.
Second part is how did the Oratorian spirit impact his view on education?
Mm-hmm.
And then third part, if we're to implement Newman's kind of ideas of education, how can the Oratorian spirit also influence how his education is kind of implemented?
Mm-hmm. That's a complicated question. Okay, can I ask you, what do you take to be, because your questions build on each other, presuming, I think, something in your mind. Well, how would you characterize, and if you don't have anything to say, that's totally fine, but how would you characterize the Oratorian spirit or ethos?
Well, I probably just kind of like community life founded on like intellectual pursuit. I don't know. I don't know very much about it. I'm just kind of curious.
Okay. Well, I don't know much about it either.
Okay. Great.
You know, sir, come on back. I want to talk to you. You know, I'm just teasing you because I knew John Paul Meany was right behind you. He knows everything about oratory in life. So really, I wish I had more insight into that. I don't think I have anything more particular. I bet John Paul Meany would have a really good insight into the lived experience, and sorry, Dr. Weir as well, pardon me, and maybe there are others. We're converts, and we came into the church in part because of Newman as well, reading the Apologia in Italy, as we were Protestant, and then we were going on a little pilgrimage to Rome, and as we were flying, or about to get on the plane, JP2 died, and we were intellectually converted, but we were dragging our feet because this is kind of silly, but we didn't think there was a way, we couldn't see a way of raising a family as a Catholic. Yeah, sorry. But we didn't really have, we had hardly any Catholic families in our lives, and didn't have Catholics were the ones you convert. That was so bad. So, anyways, we go to Rome, he dies, we show up, and 3 million other Catholics also show up, and they're all under 30. So that was for us our little touch of the heart to say, it's okay. You know, I know how to replicate the faith, even if you haven't seen it in your little Protestant experience. It's real, it's there in the Catholic world. And our first parish was an Oratorian parish. And for us, it's always, you know, a soft place. It was 20 years ago. So it's always had a soft place in our heart in the sense of it's always been a bit of an ideal. Why? Because you have so many goods combined. You have the image of, you might say, diocesan priesthood, but it's wedded to a semi-religious life. So there's permanency. It's very pastoral and homey, and Oratorians are, and they're very different in their communities. But it's also kind of learned, and they care about liturgy. So they're Benedictine in this way, and Dominican. So why did Newman choose them? Good question. I don't have a great answer for that. He looked around. He was in Rome for a while studying prior to choosing them. But I know there are really good answers, and he talks about it. But sorry, I don't have a great reply. And we'll look to John Paul Meany next. Thanks very much. Professor Meany.
Thank you, Doctor. It was an excellent talk on Newman.
Thank you.
I know a bit about the oratory because I was there for a number of years, and my question was kind of the reverse of Jackson's.
Okay.
So at the oratory, Father Robinson wrote an essay once that if Newman's ever canonized, he won't be canonized as an oratorian. Because he spent so much time away from the oratory. He didn't really embody fully the spirit of St. Philip Neri. It was kind of like almost an opposite kind of spirit in the sense. He suffered melancholia and often went into sort of almost depressions and things like that. And you think, but at the same time, St. Philip said, my point is that St. Philip said, what we know of the saints is the least part of them. And that Father Robinson, towards the end of his life, wrote a book on St. Philip that was kind of a critical book of St. Philip's struggle towards sanctity. There's much more about St. Philip we don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is besides Newman's intellectual endeavors and all his intellectual fruit, his personal journey, and could you speak something about something on the notion of finding perfection in the midst of imperfection, and even if he didn't fully live the Oratorian life in a way that was perfect according to the mind of St. Philip Neri, what do you think about his personal journey and his sanctity in finding that in his own brokenness and imperfections?
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Good question. 2 parts, too hard. I have a simple mind. So the first part, come on. I mean, I would never contradict Father Robinson. However, you know, if Newman is not a true Oratorian, I mean, tell me who is? Like people sometimes in academic. Sorry, who was that? What? Well, okay. Thanks, but no thanks. It's like people who say, in some places in scholarship, they'll say that, well, Augustine, you look at origins of modernity and you try to find these problems, and some people say, well, it really comes back to St. Augustine, and well, maybe, and if St. Augustine wasn't an authentic Catholic theologian, well, who is? So I don't know. I wouldn't myself. I'd never argue against Father Robinson, but I don't think I'd ever agree to that conclusion either, that Newman's not really an Oratorian in spirit. An anecdote comes to mind. He was once asked to preach. A series in Rome to the papal court, and he declined. And his reason was very, I would think, Oratorian. And his reply to the official was that, well, us Oratorians, we are grounded in a place and a time, and so we don't easily go off wandering. And so this is my home, and this is my pastor. So you can tell that to Father Robinson, of blessed memory. Okay, so the first on that, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he had very very good reasons for that, but I'd need to know more. I wonder why he would think that. Secondly, finding perfection. Yeah, apparently Newman did have, so they say, melancholia at times. Newman is such a sympathetic mind. It often takes people who've suffered a fair bit interiorly to be able to reach across to another mind and extend a hand of understanding. Now, of course, if your melancholia reaches too deeply, you can never get out of your own head, and it's just a disaster. You're no good to anyone. That was not Newman. Newman kept up many lively friendships over many years. Newman, like Saint Therese, is one who emphasizes holiness in the midst of small things. So here I think he's, like Philip Neri, an inheritor of the influence of Francois de Lassalle, Francis de Sales, sorry, whose little book, The Introduction to the Devout Life, is the charter for how to live a Christian lay life where sanctity can be achieved in small things. St. Therese speaks about that too, but there's a beautiful line from St. Francis de Sales up through, I would say, Newman, St. Therese, Jose Maria Escriva, and then it feeds into the Second Vatican Council and some of the documents there. So I don't have much to say beyond that. I think it's a beautiful sort of meditation or topic one could stew on over a beer, but yes, he certainly would emphasize for us that the way to convert the world is by making your bed first and saying your prayer second and saying please and thank you and trying to do little things for other people in the best way possible. And for some of us, again, that's going to mean big, flashy, smashy things. And if that's you, go do it. Don't have a small mind. Don't think that material poverty is the only way to serve God. It's just not. Right? Amen. Yeah, I thank you. Okay? But it is also a way to serve God. It's just that, there's such a beautiful variety and diversity of charisms, and Newman is a great partner to think along these lines with. Okay, thanks for that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Topping, for this excellent talk of yours. First of all, before I get to asking my question, I thought your joke about Marx and Mark was really funny.
Oh, thank you.
The multiplicity of Marx and the singularity of Mark.
That's so nice.
But speaking of communism, I
wrote that one down.
I have a friend who's a very avid communist.
Yes.
And we regularly...
A friend. And I see what you're wearing.
Shall you say.
I see what you're wearing today. I accept you.
Anyway, we regularly engage in conversations about morality and truth.
Yes.
And what I notice when talking with him is when it comes to terms and words, he likes to contort and twist them to, how should I say it, fit his meaning of what he wants the words to be.
Okay.
So that he can make a better argument for his side of the conversation. So
isn't that annoying?
It kind of is. Yeah, doesn't make a good conversation. But does Cardinal Newman have any advice on like speech, the importance of speech, and what does he have to say about words and what they mean and how impactful they can be, and you know, stuff like that, like the importance of the meaning of words and whatever.
Okay, Newman has, here's Aristotle's advice. Aristotle says, okay, look, once you get talking seriously about things and someone wonders, is there a basis to thought? Of course, Marx says thought is epiphenomenal. It's like it's a burp, you know, it's something that's not rooted in anything. Okay, so once you have someone like that, and you have to spend time together, and you drink a coffee or a beer together, and have a second, and don't be impatient. But eventually, if someone rejects reason, Aristotle says what you need to do is you need to treat them as a plant. Okay, by which
leaving advice.
Okay. That doesn't mean you trample on them, but you have to treat them differently, okay? And often what we need is we need a little bit of suffering in life. So when people use words in a specious way, or they refuse to define their terms, or they won't be held accountable in one part of the evening for what they said in the other part of the evening, then what you need to do is stop talking. Don't worry about that. You need to relate on another level. So go play tennis, or go wrestle, or go I don't know, go wash their car for them. Or go beat them up. And do something. Really, don't ignore them. But people need to have the experience of how words connect to things. And when your life and formation has been too sorely wrought or deformed, that connection is severed. And so we use words in a very manipulative way. So Aristotle's advice is eventually, once someone is not being sincere or not being held, then you've got to use other things. So that's why with children, you take away candies, or you give treats, or you give them a little pat, because the words alone aren't enough to help them. So I think that would be Aristotle and Newman's advice. Newman loved Aristotle, by the way. Did. Okay. Yes, sir?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan Topping. I really enjoyed your speech on what you said today.
Thank you.
I think you should probably teach a course on what you taught about today. I think it would be very good.
Would you take it?
Oh, probably, definitely, yeah. They
How
give you
much?
something to do. I don't know. Anyway, the question I have for you today is, why are you so interested in these people that help us and stuff like that?
Okay. Why am I so interested in someone like?
And why are you so interested in this type of work?
Okay, thank you. That's a very generous question.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And just before I answer, could I get someone to bring me the little book, or maybe Joseph Topping, would you mind bringing the little slip and a magazine? Because I'd like to just name that very quickly at the end. So, well, sir, why am I interested in these things? Doesn't your heart ache sometimes? Yeah, it does. Sometimes we get glimpses of beautiful things, and it propels us on. And sometimes we also get the experience of very painful things, harsh things that make us realize we are completely inadequate. Life is terrible. That experience of desire, I think, is planted inside of all of us. Oh, thank you, dear. So that we can be propelled further. And Augustine has that beautiful line where he says, our hearts are restless. George Herbert has a beautiful poem called The Pulley, which I'll end with. When God at first made man, having a glass of blessings standing by, let us, said he, pour in him all we can. Let the world's riches, which dispersed lie, contract into a span. So strength first made a way, then beauty flowed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure. When almost all was out, God made a stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasure rest at the bottom lay. For if I should, said he, bestow this jewel also on my creature, he should rest in nature, not the God of nature. So both should losers be. Yet let him keep the rest, but keep them with repining restlessness. Let him be rich and weary, that at least, if goodness lead him not yet, weariness may toss him to my breast. Thank you very much. So thank you so much for coming. What night is tonight? Wednesday. Isn't there something better to do with your time? Oh, I know there is. I know there is. So thank you for coming to a lecture to hear a little bit about Newman. I hope you will come away thinking, I like Newman. I'm so happy that the church has given us this doctor. And consider reading just a little bit, and if nothing else, know we have the greatest intellectual tradition in the history of the world. Catholics have been thinking about thinking more than anyone else. It's true. So have confidence that we have people like Newman and St. Thomas who are there for us. I did want to, before I go, we're going to make a little raffle or draw. So we have a new institute called the Gregory the Great Institute. Yes! It's quite so good. So yeah, I'll give you your $20 after, thanks. Anyways, so we have a new magazine. So the Gregory the Great Institute, it's a new lay apostolate that started in Alberta, where we're based. We have 25 people who are involved in governance or operations. We're in our first year. And what we do is, our mission is to help equip Christians to renew culture in the light of faith and reason. That's our task. It's kind of a lofty task. The three ways that we're doing that are through formation programs, courses, and through publications. So we're just starting out. We're in the midst of our, we have various phases for our rollout and all these things. But I did want to point out two things. So we've got a new magazine. I don't know if you know First Things or of Bishop Barron's Evangelizing Culture. We thought we should have something like that in Canada. So we published, we have an annual conference. Our first one was last October. Cardinal Collins was among our keynotes. He did a wonderful job. Thank you, Cardinal Collins. Anyway, so this comes out of that experience, although there are other essays, etc. And at the back, we're especially proud of this, and I want to highlight this because it's related to you somewhat. In the back section, what we do is we highlight various kinds of Catholic art and music and poetry that's being composed or written or developed in Canada right now. And we highlighted this year Catherine Doherty. So she got in the back cover. And I think one of your students, Joseph Ferrant, was he a former student? Yes, okay, he was the painter of this. And we also highlighted the poetry of one of your professors. So, I was only able to bring a few. They cost $20. Believe me, they cost about $10,000 to produce. So, but if you'd like one, go to our website, and it's gregorythegreat.ca, and you can click it and order it. The first batch are being ordered out now, or sorry, sent out now. You'll get a copy. So anyways, consider that. It's a way of participating in Catholic intellectual life in the country in a very small way, in a nascent way. And if you would like, also, we would love to have you on our mailing list. So there's a little slip at the back. If you put, if you're interested, put your name on there, please. And then we'll make a draw, and we'll give you a free book about Cardinal Newman. So I have a book I can give you. And also, we have one magazine that we can give out. So at some point before we leave tomorrow, we'll, if you don't mind, feel free to do that. But most of all, thank you very much for coming and for your love for so many good things that you're pursuing here. Thank you.
So thank you again, Dr. Topping, and I have a token of appreciation for you here. Yes. And I want to thank also all those who were involved in putting on the event tonight, especially Hannah Felsky, who did a lot of work for us those who are working on the tech, especially Fred Duquette, and a number of students behind the scenes here who you haven't seen. But so we have a reception at the back with light refreshments, and again, please check out the tables, fill out the form. To end the evening, I'm going to ask Professor Newman to lead us in a Marian hymn. So please, if we could all stand.